Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Brand New Live. Joined this evening with Ben Hall from the UK. Ben and I connected. We're actually just chatting about it off the air a good while ago now over LinkedIn. We've become good mates, actually. Ben is a consummate professional. He's a airline pilot, A380 he's flown, A320s he's flown. He is the co-founder of Pilotbase and a really great guy. More so than that, though, he's the host of a podcast as well. So that puts him in another league altogether. I was just thinking before this show started, we do have quite high standards on this show because we only have CRJ pilots and A380 pilots. So the two top tier aircraft around. The 380 and the CRJ are sort of put in the same bracket. So if you don't fly those aircraft, unfortunately, Brian Air Live is not your show. Anyway, Ben, awesome to have you on.
Cheers, guys. Nice knowing you. Thank you, Brian. Cheers. Hey, cheers.
It's great to be here, and I'm really glad that you don't interview any Boeing pilots because then it's a bit of a no-go for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's
no, but it's great to be here, and yeah, I guess what me and Brian connected. We were just trying to work it out. We couldn't quite put our finger on it, but probably just when the whole COVID pandemic was kicking off, and I was kind of starting up Pilotbase, and I was just starting to build my network. I didn't know anybody at all really. I just thought I'd get on LinkedIn, and Brian was one of the first guys to reach out, and ever since then we've kind of been in touch, been following you guys, and you're doing some great stuff down in South Africa. So it's great.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. But having a look at your profile there tonight, you've built a hell of a following in that year, and listening to your podcast over the last few weeks as well, you haven't exactly stumbled when you started that podcast. You guys went from being a startup podcast to a sort of well-oiled machine straight away. So kudos to you guys on that, because it's no easy feat. We know it. And you've built yourself a hell of a network. We'll chat about networking later on because I think it's important. But Ben, just give us a bit of a rundown on your flying, because obviously a lot of aviators listening to us here tonight. It'd be interesting for you to just tell your aviation story.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess it all started when I was like 16. I was in high school. I wanted to be a pilot, couldn't afford commercial pilot training, so I thought military's the to go. I took 5. You guys use centimeters, right? So that's 197. So basically, the RAF told me to bugger off, the Navy told me to bugger off, and I got a scholarship with the Army Air Corps, so that would be to fly helicopters with them, essentially. Anybody with fast jets said I'm too old, and if I ejected, I'd just my kneecap. So that was a non-starter, really. So I got a scholarship with the Army through university, and then had a pretty bad rugby accident just in my final year of university. So I hadn't thought about jobs at all, right? Because everything was completely set in my path. Had a rugby accident, I snapped my ACL, partially ruptured my PCL and my LCL, so my knee was just in pieces. So I got a medical discharge before I even joined the military. So kind of had to go back to the drawing board. Started work as a business analyst for a couple of years, saved up a bit of cash, and then moved to where you guys are. Moved down to South Africa and started my flying training there. So I went down to 43 Air School, and it was actually through a company in England called Bristol Aviation. So you got a UK license, but because in South Africa everything's a little bit cheaper and the weather's nicer and you've got uncongested airspace, they send you down to South Africa for the vast majority of the flying, and then you go back to the UK and finish off your multi-engine CPLIR stuff in the UK. And as I was doing that, I had about like 170 hours, and then Etihad in Abu Dhabi started opening up their cadet scheme. And I was really, really lucky. It was just right time, right place. Interview in Johannesburg, got accepted, and they said, stop your training, because if you have like a license, you're a professional pilot and you can't be a cadet. So I stopped my training, went back to be a business analyst for about a year or so until they gave me the call. And then, yeah, slid into Abu Dhabi, having never been to the country before in my life. Hadn't ever been to the Middle East. Just rocked up with 12 other guys in the middle of the desert, ready to go. So, yeah, Abu Dhabi was great. They gave me a really, really great opportunity. Etihad's an excellent airline. I don't care what people say. It's wonderful. So I kind of did some initial training again with them, and then they type rated me on the 320. So I flew the 320 family, sort of short haul around the Middle East. I think our longest route was kind of Moscow, Minsk, that kind of area to the northwest, over to India in the east. And yeah, there was loads of little short haul hops around the Middle East. And then I was lucky enough to transfer onto the 380 for a couple of years. And then when I moved back to the UK, I thought, right, I'm not done with the airlines, but I want a bit of a change here. So I found a job with a company called Cobham, which was, up until recently, a massive defense company in the UK. And they had this tiny little aviation wing. And basically, they've got a fleet of Falcon 20s, and they do something called operational readiness training. So you're effectively the enemy for military war games. All right, so they've got a fleet of Falcon 20s. They've got 4 hard points on the wings, so they've got various different pods they can fit to it. And they basically do electronic warfare war games against the military to train them for their sort of operations. And then I left there to move to British Airways, because when British Airways say, come fly with the 380 for us, you can't really say no. And then obviously COVID hit. My last flight was from Johannesburg, landed in the UK, and the captain said, I don't think we'll be touching this airplane for a long old time. And how right he was. So I've never flown it again. So didn't fly. So that was sort of March last year. Had a similar situation to everybody else, right? So 12 months of redundancy talks and not knowing where the airlines are going, all this sort of stuff. Now, British Airways was in a really good situation because they had quite a lot of cash. But that was, well, still is bleeding on a daily basis. So they had to make the decision and chop some pilots, and effectively it was last in, first out. So I was out the door. So, yeah, so Cobham actually got bought out by a company called Draken International. So I've re-entered the Draken ranks, flying the Falcon 20 again, but they're now backed by Blackstone, the investment firm. So they've got some big plans for the future. So yeah, that's my flying background.
Wow, you've certainly had quite an interesting career there so far, Ben. I mean, I tell you what, I do envy you guys that managed to get your paws on that A380. Something I would have loved to have flown in my career. But it must be quite exciting being cannon fodder in a Falcon. I mean, gee, there must be some interesting photographs that come out of that.
Well, not many photographs. Defense companies tend to be quite shady and sorry, shady is probably the wrong word there, but they don't publicize and stuff, right? So photographs are probably off the cards.
Yeah, no, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the transition 380 to Falcon 20, back to 380, and now back to Falcon 20 is actually pretty hard, because these Falcon 20s, some of them are sort of nearly 50 years old. So they're pretty clockwork inside, and 380 is obviously a massive flying computer. And it's 2 completely separate jobs, but love them both for different reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very exciting, man.
Ben, I've got to ask you, is Cobham a little bit like your typical Top Gun? Because in a Falcon 20, a little bit different to some of those jets.
Yeah, so the new company that bought them over, so Draken International, they are known as the world's largest private air force. So in the States, I think they've got something like 100. So they've just bought a bunch of, I think, cheetahs from you guys.
Yeah.
They've got A4s, they've got L159s, L39s, all stuff. So they're mainly based, they do loads of work out of like Ness Air Force Base and stuff in the States. So they're quite well established over there. And bought the aviation arm of Draken because they they want to extend European operations. So currently we don't have any fast jets in the UK, so it's not quite gun here yet. But the Falcons are punchy little sports cars compared to the 380.
Yeah, I'm sure. Ben, you mentioned you landed back in Heathrow from Johannesburg on your 380, and can you talk us through that little period that obviously came with us and here in South Africa, certainly for myself and Ryan and a lot of the people listening tonight with us at SA Express. It was so immediate and so abrupt when all this happened, because I remember we were supposed to get a salary on the 25th of the month. That salary never came through. And on the 26th of the month, I think that was, when was that? March, Ryan. It was evident that the game was over. It was very quick. It was like having your head chopped off. So that transition for us was a little bit more of a survival type of thing. We knew there were not going to be flying jobs around, and we went out, started to look for something else. Obviously, in Europe, you would expect that things are a little bit more cared for than here in South Africa. And how was it for you guys? I mean, did you run away straight away and go try start something else, or did you hang on and wait to see if things improved?
No, so for us it was a bit more of a drawn out, painful experience. Obviously, it's not great having your head cut away, but at least you know where you stand, right? Mm. So for us, I think in my head I underplayed it, to be honest. So I was flying all the way up until March, absolutely fine, no problem. I kind of heard this coronavirus started happening, had a couple of flights into Hong Kong in early March, and there was restrictions starting to be in place there, sort of face coverings and stuff like this. But I still kind of thought, it's going to be one of these things, a bit like bird flu. It kind of comes through and might affect a few localized places, but nah. And then it kind of really hit home. So that last flight to South Africa was a repatriation flight. So basically they sent it down there. We were quarantined in the hotel, filled the aircraft up and left. And the airport was horrendous that day, because obviously anybody that wasn't South African was just trying to get out. Because that was the day you guys closed your borders with like 24 hours notice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we snuck out about 4 hours before your borders close. And walking through the airport, we had people like grabbing at our uniforms and stuff, and families crying that they just can't get out, and there's no hotels, and they need to get back to their families and all this sort of stuff. It was a really rough experience.
Kind of sounds like something that you would only see in the movies. I'm getting chills.
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant at all. But like even still, then I kind of thought, it's probably going to last a few months, maybe, and that's it. And I remember the other FO I was flying with, because we fly 3 crew down to Joburg, was a guy I actually joined British Airways with. And he said to me when we landed in Heathrow, he was just like, I don't think we're going to touch this aircraft ever again. And I just thought, nah, I think you're being a bit dramatic, mate. And none of us have at all. So so from that point onwards, BA basically, closed ops down pretty much. And there was about 3 or 4 months where everything looked okay and they were going to keep everybody, and then there was redundancy talks, and then the union got involved, and then obviously everybody's trying to fight their corner a little bit, so everybody thinks everything else is unfair, and we got to the point in August where we got our redundancy notices. There was about 250 of us, and actually at that point I felt so much better. When I just knew what was going to happen. When I was sitting there on, reduced pay, not flying, didn't know what was going to happen, bottom of the seniority list, it was a horrible place to be. You just can't plan your life. You can't do anything, right? But at least when they said, yeah, that's it. Sorry, guys. Last day is November 20th, I think. At that point, I could be like, right, I could focus on Pilotbase properly and, put 100% of my effort into something else.
Yeah, I think we can relate with that. I mean, the last sort of 2 years at SA Express for Brian and myself and the whole airline complement as a whole was quite difficult, because things were quite rocky. And for a long time there, we also, we had lots of ups and downs, and from month to month, you would always have this uncertainty. And I think when when the hammer did eventually drop, it was nice to have some finality and a clear-cut decision, and you could sort of move on with a clear mind from there that it was game over and carry on with your plans. So yeah, it's quite a liberating sort of feeling that when it is made final, I can
Yeah, exactly. I just hate that state of limbo in between where you kind of, you guys know as much as anybody, when you work for an airline, you're kind of owned by them a little bit, right? They run your life with their roster and stuff, and it was kind of, they own you, but worse than ever. So I know the management and stuff had a really hard decision, and I mean, I still don't agree with it. Why would you sack the cheapest 250 people to save money? It's beyond me, but that's way above my pay grade, isn't it? So yeah, it's just one of those things. I think you just got to smile and wave and understand it's just, a black swan event. It's probably never going to happen ever again, and just got to roll with the punches and do what you can.
Mm-hmm. Ben, something that you mentioned there, during that limbo period, it makes it so difficult to accept reality because you don't understand exactly what reality is. And I think a lot of pilots, a lot of crew, a lot of individuals across the board hung on for so long, waiting for things to get back to normal. And here we are, we're so far down the line, and we're sitting in the same boat for a lot of airlines. So when you received that notification, I suppose that was that time when you were able to say, well, this is it. It's never going to happen. I'm not climbing back into it, not in the foreseeable future, not into the 380.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that I really struggled with was the little glimpses of hope throughout. So you knew it was a pretty shitty situation for everybody, right? But occasionally you would hear, okay, maybe this border's opening, or there's a travel corridor, or, I don't wish bad on other people, but, there was talk on, okay, we're getting rid of this fleet, so maybe all of those guys will go and I'll be saved and this sort of stuff. So you got like little glimmers of hope throughout, and then they got dashed every time. So yeah, when that final call came, I was just like, right, let's draw a line under it. I've had my fun, and I'm pretty lucky as well because I've had like 11 years in the airlines, and I've flown, the 380 and the 320, and I've ticked off quite a lot of my bucket list in terms of airline flying. I really feel for the guys that are just starting their career, big break in British Airways, or plenty of other airlines around the world, and now they feel pretty stuck, to be honest. Whereas I've been pretty lucky that I can get into another flying job relatively easily.
Ben, you mentioned the Pilotbase, and obviously, we need to chat about that because obviously some similarities, some parallels with what you did and what we were able to do. I decided when things got bad that I was just gonna dig my teeth into Ryanair as hard as I can and see what we can do. I just felt that being proactive in one area, even if it was a relatively narrow idea at the time, the idea at the time was to keep a podcast going. And in all honesty, to chat about the news like we do, was obviously, it's always been an interest of mine as to what's happening in the aviation industry, but it also gave me an endless amount of content. I mean, the industry was providing me with content without me having to go and find content. So, from that perspective, it's worked nicely for me. But from a personal point of view and even a mental point of view, it was so important to have something to do. Because, we've had a couple of lockdowns in South Africa, sitting at home, and that time waiting for things to happen when you're not in control, that eats you up. It's not good for you mentally at all. And just having that one extra little thing to work on helped me a lot. So just walk us through a Pilotbase, because obviously it's quite an innovative company. It involved on the pilot recruitment side. You obviously saw a gap there, saw a need for it. And then on top of that, you've done a very modern thing and starting a podcast to sort of promote the business. And it's quite an innovative approach. So just walk us through getting involved in Pilotbase, and obviously you're the co-founder there. So I'd like to know that journey a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And can I just say, firstly, that you guys have done a bloody good job, because starting a podcast is not an easy thing. I know when people, watch it on here or listen to it, it just seems like, a couple of people having a chat in a room, but there's so much planning and effort that actually goes into it.
Thanks,
got a pretty professional setup here. So yeah, great job to start with.
Thanks, man.
In terms of Pilotbase, right. So this has been a little project of mine for a long old time. I've always wanted to do something, like, I love flying, don't get me wrong, but I've always had in the back of my mind, it's a very fragile career because I never foresaw a pandemic, but I always thought, you could lose your medical really easily, right? Just have a car accident or, get an illness or something and your career's over. So I've always wanted to do something a little bit different. So I've worked in management off and on. Just to give me like a bit of a backup. But I've always wanted my own little gig on the side. And I kind of saw this niche, I guess, when I was just looking at leaving Etihad and I was moving back to the UK, was the plan. I looked around on pilot job websites and to be honest, they were pretty rubbish. So it's quite easy to build a website in terms of you can get like a WordPress website, like a template or something like this. And you can get it to do some stuff pretty quickly, which I found a lot of the websites did, but they didn't specialize in pilots. Piloting is such a niche job role, right? You can't have a job board that just has keyword and location when you're searching for a job because what the hell do you search for? Pilot. Okay, they all come up. And then I was finding that you search for a job and there's no information about it, or you read right at the bottom of the job description that actually you need to speak Chinese or something. So it's like, oh, this is crap. So, it's been a little project for a little while. And then when COVID hit, I just thought, exactly as you guys did, let's make the most of this. I'm not one for sitting at home playing computer games and wasting my time. So I like to feel a bit productive and actually produce things. And we kind of thought, even if it doesn't go anywhere, at least we're going to learn some personal skills, right? So a bit of graphic design, a bit of web design, a bit of everything. So we kind of made a plan and we got together, really luckily, a really good team. So the three co-founders is actually me, my brother, and a guy called Paul. So I'm obviously a pilot by trade. My brother is an accountant by trade, but he's very good at sort of commercial aspects. And actually he did Pilotbase as his main project for his MBA, which sort of was the main basis of all of the business. And then Paul, who is the husband of an old school friend of mine, he works in like fintech startups. So he was really good on the tech side. He's not a coder himself, but he was really good at managing the tech side. So there's three of us, kind of made a plan, and we thought, right, basically we're just going to make recruitment better and easier for pilots. That was kind of the goal. I don't know if you guys have had any like interactions with tech, but you can't just do a goal like that, apparently.
Yeah.
So we got some developers on board, and I very quickly realized that is a big old task because developers obviously, on the whole, know nothing about aviation, and it's so nuanced, right? It's the difference between an aircraft type and a type rating. Try and explain that to a developer. So I was like, right, I want a job board where you can put in your type rating, and it comes up with all the aircraft types that you're eligible for. So for me, the challenge has been translating all of my ideas into a technical solution. And then with that, you have to do obviously all the sales and the marketing and the branding and all that other crap that comes with it. And I guess I started probably where you guys did. So Google, right? Yeah. What's the best way to market a tech platform? And that's kind of where the podcast came from, actually, initially. So initially it was, right, it's a really good marketing tool. It's kind of forward thinking. It gives a good impression of your company. You can get transcripts, and then it helps your SEO on your website and all this sort of stuff. And then once you start doing the podcast and speaking to people, you realize, actually, no, that stuff's secondary. It's the networking and the interaction. And, actually reaching out and chatting to people is the really important stuff.
Yeah, I think the three of us have been quite lucky, being all three of us involved in aviation. It's kind of helped the whole sort of idea and the technology thing morph a little bit easier, I suppose. We haven't had to translate as much as you would have had to, although the learning curve has been pretty steep for all of us. I mean, I also had fancy ideas in the middle of lockdown. I'm trying to become an app developer, and I delved a little bit into the coding side and quickly realized, man, it's probably going to be easier to learn fluent Mandarin than
Back up.
Ryan with app development. Oh, you can just imagine what that must be like. Doing any type of development. Doing any type of development with a developer and trying to get your point across is like trying to explain something to a Frenchman in Afrikaans. It just does not work, and all of that is happening in Ryan Parrick's head at the same time. So he didn't even know what he was trying to develop.
I can actually correct you there, Brett. Explaining anything to a Frenchman in Afrikaans is quite easy if you've got enough brandy in you. Trust me, done that.
But Ryan, I've gone down exactly the same route. I've thought, right, you know what, maybe I can teach myself a bit of coding and do it myself. And then you kind of get to lesson 1 and you're like, right, shit, backpedal. Get somebody else to do it instead. There's no chance.
There's a reason why those guys make so much damn money.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
There's also a reason why those guys sit in a dark room and never leave their room, because that's all they can do.
True story.
But I'll tell you what, if people are like leaving university or leaving high school at the moment, and like an app developer with aviation knowledge is in high demand. I know loads of guys that are like trying to create aviation related apps, and they just can't get the aviation knowledge, with the app developer.
Yeah, we're listening to your latest podcast with I forget the name, but the Noah, the Log 10 Pro. Quite a nice story there, because obviously a bit of aviation knowledge, and he's used that to create a hell of an app. I mean, I've been using it for years, and I can't do without it anymore, to be honest. If you had to tell me to go use something else, I wouldn't even know where to start. So the first subscription that gets paid on my end is Log 10 Pro. So yeah, it definitely does.
They're a really cool company, actually. So I reached out to them. So I had this idea of like being able to link your pilot logbook to a pilot profile, which would then match you to jobs and stuff like this. And I've been using Log 10 Pro for years as well. And I kind of reached out thinking, this is a long shot here. But, good old LinkedIn, what's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah.
And their marketing director got straight back to me and said, it's a really cool idea. Got a little team together, and we've been working on it for like 6 months, and they're a fantastic little company. And I said that they are actually quite small, so I think there's only maybe 30 of them, but they've got, they've just got everything in order. They've got a really cool app. And they're pretty forward thinking as well. So we might be doing some extra stuff with them in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Can you explain what that link there for the people that haven't listened to that podcast, Ben? What the deal you've got there with Corridon?
Yeah, for sure. So we've just released our pilot profiles. So basically, we started our platform with just the job board. We've now created pilot profiles, so you can like log in and you can store all of your pilot information, right? And then we're in the process now of building like an algorithm which matches you automatically to jobs. So if you go in there and you say that you've got a CRJ type rating and you've got 3,000 PIC hours, blah, blah, blah. Every time a new job comes up that matches you, it'll just ping you an email and show on your dashboard. And then we thought, instead of people just updating their hours, because that's like the most dynamic thing that goes out of date, a little live link to your logbook must be technically possible, right? So got in touch with them, as they're by far and away the market leaders, right? There's other ones that kind of cover Android and stuff, but iOS especially, they're definitely market leaders. So got in touch with them, and they were up for it. So basically you connect their app to Pilotbase, And then when you log into your Pilotbase profile, all your hours are up to date as per your last logbook update. And just to confirm, you cannot mess your logbook up from Pilotbase. It is a one-way stream only, because that's the biggest concern people have said, that they log into Pilotbase and they're like, I don't want to mess up my logbook. Can't do it. Don't you worry.
Yeah, you wouldn't have much issue having to update my logbook there. It's been pretty constant for the last year and a half.
It's a bit disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think your idea there is pretty cool. It's very cutting edge, and it's it's definitely a good way forward. I was just stressing a bit when you said that, because the exact same thing went through my brain. Brian was like, if these guys are going to start, assessing you on recency, then there's a couple of us that are pretty stuffed.
So up until really recently in Europe, a lot of them have got like a lot of jobs available. Say last flight must have been within the last 6 months or within the last 12 months. And I think they're getting like no applications. So
really
right now.
Yeah, I mean,
we see that in the Samero Center. The guys are coming in there and they're having to do last minute quick recurrencies just to get up and running, because suddenly the jobs come available and the guys are caught with their pants down. It's a problem, eh? It really is.
And it's expensive problem as well, right? Because if you're a pilot without work and you're not getting any income, do you want to be spending like thousands of dollars keeping your license current? It's like that real toss up. It's tricky. It's a tricky one to do.
Yeah.
Ben, what's the vibe in the UK at the moment with regards to training? Obviously, we're involved with Samera here in South Africa, a training organization, so training always at the forefront of our ideas. What's happening at an ab initio sort of level there in the UK or in Europe, I suppose? All right, nothing.
No,
right,
so I think, you know what? I'm being a bit flippant there. I think there is still an amount of sort of trainees coming through the system. It's definitely down on what it used to be. And I know a lot of the training schools are really struggling because, as you guys well know, training schools don't make a lot of money at the best of times. Your margins are pretty tight, right? So, yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of training schools closing down in the not too distant future in Europe, unfortunately.
We've got a peculiar situation here because our ab initio training schools are flat out. They are doing really well. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the people here are viewing this as an opportunity to get into aviation, using this as an opportunity, but the training schools are flying flat out. And not just one or two of them, the majority of them. It's interesting to see. Yeah.
Well, it's a typical situation that you were in before, Ben, where you came out here to do your ab initio and all your training. I mean, this is what the guys are doing. I mean, a huge amount of Indian pilots coming out here just because they've got a one-stop solution here in South Africa, and the flying conditions are great. So it makes sense why the guys are coming through, and probably a lot less expensive.
Well, I guess I'm thinking it's a bit silly to start flying training now, but I did exactly the same 12 years ago, right? After the 2008 financial crash, what did I do? Pack up bags and move to South Africa for my flying training. So it might not be a bad idea. There might be some jobs kicking around in a couple of years when they come out.
Yeah,
I think it will be that way. I mean, we've spoken about it in many of our earlier podcasts that we did. You know, aviation is the one industry that does typically bounce back quite quickly. If you look at all the events historically, they've said that aviation comes back quite quick. So hopefully in this instance it'll be more of the same.
Have you guys seen the American job market for pilots at the moment? It is booming.
It's going. Canadian market as well. It seems to be, there's massive expansion and growth happening there.
I literally can't. The difference between Europe, which is like literally zero, right?
Yeah.
There's not an airline in Europe that's recruiting, and then you look over the border to America, and it's. I mean, I think some of the regionals are kind of at panic stations because the likes of Delta, I think they just basically said that they were going to recruit something like 150 pilots a month for the next 12 months or something. And then, obviously all the regionals, which are feeders to Delta and United, now panic stations. They're like, right, so they've immediately resumed. I saw I think it was Endeavour Air. They've got like a $20,000 signing bonus.
That's
Whereas, you know, in the UK, if you get paid $20,000 for the year, then you'll be happy at the moment.
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing that disparity between America and the rest of the world at the moment. We've spoken about it a few times on our show. It's crazy to see. Part of my job, I pick the news up as much as I can, and there's this sort of this constant upward trend of positive news from an aviation standpoint coming out of the States. In South Africa, us at the moment, the big news of the week is the SAA story now being sort of semi-privatized, or have they? Don't quite know. Maybe a bit of a
do we know who
dodgy
that mystery buyer is yet?
Previn. I mean, I don't know, Ben. But
Previn Global.
Yeah. It's been bought out by a consortium. And that consortium has Global Airways, and it's also got our public. What do they call it? The pension fund.
Public Investment Corporation.
Yeah. So there's a lot. The government have 49% still, but they've got, I think, 30% through the PRC. So it's not a cut and dry, wholly private owned equity thing at the moment. That's for sure. We'll chat about it a bit on our next show, because it's something that requires a little bit of research and before you can even comment. All we have to really do is ask ourselves, is it good for South African aviation? I think we've been calling for it for a long time to have some sort of private involvement in SAA. Global is a well-respected company. They bring with it the right resources, the right pilots, the right equipment, everything. So on the surface, you would say yes. Unfortunately, with the likes of myself and Ryan and Alan, who's commented here a few times tonight, and a whole lot of other people that were affected by SA Express, we've had our fingers burnt. So we're a little bit more cautious when you read these things. But time will tell. With us at Sim Aero as well, you asked earlier how things are. Africa is also on the up. I think Brett might be able to answer the question better. I don't know how many airlines have started up in Nigeria in the past 6 months, but it's crazy. Airlines popping up all the time. We've done initials on the ERJ. Sure, we do a set of initials every 3 weeks, and most of the clients are from Nigeria. So Africa as a whole has been very resilient, and not only resilient, they seem to be looking at this as potential for growth. So while the big carriers haven't been coming in, some of these smaller carriers in these countries have now popped up, and hopefully it will be good for African aviation. South African aviation, time will tell. The loads on the domestic routes for the likes of Fly Safair and Kalula and that have been very low, but they're good airlines, so you expect Kalula and Safair to be around for a while. What's going to happen with Mango now with Lyft, because Lyft is a new low-cost carrier here, and they linked to Global, and Global obviously now with this link with SAA, so SAA essentially going to have two low-cost carriers, which as you can imagine, what that does for the margins of the private companies domestically is just horrendous. But that's a bit of a starter for my rant on Friday, guys.
I am hoping that, although it's been absolutely awful for the aviation industry, it might act as a bit of a reset, because I think there's a lot of airlines around the world who only really do a good job. Well, only are in the position they're in because of legacy reasons, right? They own certain slots or routes or like certain prestige or government links or whatever. And although I don't like any company to go bust, it might be a good thing just to like clear the wheat from the chaff and start again a little bit. Having said that, as you said, there are a lot of good airlines that are actually just bleeding cash still, and those would be the ones that would be really sad to see go under, because they're good business models, they do a good job, they've got good fleet, good guys, and they just run out of money, and there's nothing they can do about it. So they're the ones that would be really disappointing if they went under.
Yeah, Ben, we're seeing it worldwide. Europe is you know, the example of that, with it being shut down to such an extent that you got brilliantly managed airlines that can't operate anymore. And then you've got in certain countries where the airlines were making a loss before the entire pandemic, but they're receiving bailout. So there isn't a proper understanding and a proper business model when it comes to airlines worldwide, because it's the most obscure airlines that shouldn't be operating are still carrying on because of bailouts and that. So yeah, it doesn't make sense from many perspectives.
Are a really contentious point, I think, because some countries support aviation a lot better than other countries, and that provides then an unfair advantage going forwards, because you know, some countries that get no bailouts, they just have to really reduce their fleet and their routes to bare minimum, whereas you guys know that, you know, once you've got dominance on a route or something, it's very hard for somebody else to get in there. So yeah, it's down to the government, but I mean, I wouldn't want to be a politician right now, right? At what point do you say, right, sorry guys, we've got no more money for you? And what point do you say, right, we'll just keep chucking cash at you because it will get better at some point soon?
Yeah. Getting back to the African aviation sort of context of things, you know, like countries like Nigeria are certainly flexing their muscles with, like you said, so many startups. But the airlines are pulling in, you know, brand new equipment. If you look at iBomb Air now, they've just taken delivery of 2 brand new A320s. Airpiece, I think, have bought in the region of about 16 E195 E2s. These guys are pulling in new toys. They're not messing around. So, yeah, there's obviously a lot of, I don't suppose that's government money that's getting thrown around, but yeah, it's interesting to see Africa, you know, flex their muscles in times like this.
And if you can get these airlines getting like nice fuel efficient new aircraft versus some of the legacy stuff that's like 20 years old and falling apart, then, you know, you're going to get that load factor as well going forwards. But have you guys seen the website radarbox.com?
No,
Go check it out
haven't
if you haven't seen it. Basically, you can select a bunch of different airlines and you can see, I think, so it's a graph basically, and I think on the y-axis it's number of flights and x-axis is time.
Okay.
So like if you look at Europe, for example, any airline in Europe, you've got 2019 and that they're at a certain level, and then 2020 and 2021 they're 20%, whatever. If you look at the States or China or those countries with like a really big domestic market, a lot of the airlines have got higher amounts of flights going than they did in 2019. Like American Airlines, for example, they're about 20% higher currently.
Oh wow,
crazy.
Wow.
Ben, one of the things you might not be aware of here as well, while SAA has been sitting on the ground not flying, the Air Service License Council here in South Africa, no one's been able to get hold of them. So all the airlines, our private airlines like Comair and FlySafair, they haven't, and Airlink, they haven't been able to access these routes that have been left behind by SA Express and SAA. But yeah, I think they'll come back to life shortly when SAA are, start requesting more routes. Anyway, it's been a bit of a sorry state of affairs, and I really do feel for the likes of Safair and Airlink, and thank goodness for those airlines, because Safair is a world-class low-cost airline. They really are good. Their on-time performance is good. They use the right aircraft. They've just got the business model is brilliant. Their online platform is good. They've created a very, very strong brand. Airlink is without doubt our flag carrier these days. They fly to the most destinations. They run superbly by Roger Foster. He's got a hell of a good staff below him who stay very much below the radar. There's sort of no heroes at Airlink. They just do their job. So I do feel for those guys, and I just hope it just maintains there's a level playing field. I have my doubts. I do have my doubts. We get so tight on time on the show, and I want to talk about networking a bit, Ben, because it's an important thing. We mentioned we connected through LinkedIn. you've used social media very well. I think, the whole Pilotbase setup does not, it looks extremely professional. As you mentioned, having the podcast attached to that just adds to the professionalism, and you're able to, to get a crowd like Corridon across and you collaborating with the likes of them is huge for, a relatively new company. Pilot recruitment, obviously, you could argue right now is not the best business to be in, but you guys seem to be more than that. It's sort of like us, in that no one's ever going to say, hey, go start a podcast. It's a fantastic business. You're going to make millions of rand. But you said earlier, or millions of rand for you, you'll probably buy you a loaf of bread. Pound. But you've got
that's such a South African comment, Brian. Come on.
Yeah.
We talk dollars and pounds and euros, man.
I'm trying to expand the show into Europe here tonight. That's why Ben's on. I can't talk about ZAR over here. But networking is almost, I would argue, is almost more critical than the business itself right now. Mm-hmm. So you've got the Pilotbase base, and you can use that for networking. So regardless of what Pilotbase does, you've built a hell of a strong network around you, and when things do turn around, you're obviously going to make full use of that network that you've created.
Yeah, for sure. I think networking is so important, and actually up until this year or last year, I didn't really realize that at all, because I was fat, dumb and happy, flying my airplanes. There was no need to network, right? You just go do your job. But when you're starting a business or a podcast or an organization or anything, you need the support of people around you. You cannot do everything by yourself, right? And actually, people are a lot better than, people are good people on the whole. Mm-hmm. So there's been so many people that have just volunteered to support us in like any way they can. No financial reward, nothing. We got a really good team behind us now, and that's mainly been from LinkedIn, actually. And again, I've never really used LinkedIn in the past. I maybe had like 50 connections or something, and looked at it once every 6 months. But it's a really, really powerful platform. And I just think when you start a business, especially, right, you can have the best idea ever, but if nobody else wants it, then it's going nowhere. Yeah. And until you understand what your target market wants and needs, you can't really make a plan. So that was kind of our idea right from the beginning, right? We had an idea, and we think we hit a niche, and we think there is a need for it, but we need all that feedback. Like, we need this constant feedback, and we're going for like a really iterative approach. So we didn't want to spend like 100 grand building this massive platform, and then 10 people say, well, that's shit, I want something else. So we like build a little bit, speak to people, network, ask recruiters, ask pilots in like loads of different areas and regions. We don't just want airline pilots, we want private jet and special mission and bush pilots, and everybody to get involved, and everybody has their own little unique requirements. And the more information, the more people you can speak to, the more you can like compile all this stuff and, and try and build the best business for your target market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, when I was still flying regularly, I had this thing for years that I was going to be the first guy ever on Facebook to never change my profile picture. That was my mission in life.
You have to me for that one.
And all of a sudden you find yourself in this position, and you're forced to network and get out there. And initially it was quite intimidating, but you're starting to sort of reap the rewards now, and getting to meet guys like yourself, and every week meeting new people, especially through this podcast platform. It really is cool. And like you said, people aren't as scary as what one thinks. It really is cool to get out there and make these connections.
Yeah, for sure. And I've never really been like a social media person at all. So like I've got all the normal platforms, I guess. So I've got Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn and Twitter, but I never really used any of them on a regular basis. It was more just keep in touch with friends and family. And actually, I feel a little bit uncomfortable to start with. I felt like I was kind of putting myself out there, and I felt like I was, you post something on LinkedIn and then you're like, oh, lots of people are going to think you're a knob, and like, why do you know what I mean? Because you're like,
Exactly
like semi-salesy, semi-marketing, and I hate that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you got to do it right. You just got to do it, and you got to try stuff out, and some stuff works, some stuff doesn't, and you just got to like learn and try and get better each day.
Yeah.
I hear you.
You can feel like there's no better word than you use there. You feel like a real fucking knob. You post something and you say, "Fuck, I hope my mates don't see this." Even worse, I hope my family doesn't see this. But in the process, you're trying to actually get the most people to see it. It's weird. You get offered. I mean, Ben, I think when I spoke to you the other day, it wasn't that long. I mean, I don't know how many days ago I spoke to you. 5 days ago, I said, Ben, can you be on the show? And I think we've got very much in tune to just sort of accepting everything now, because we want to tell our story. We want to promote our brand. And when we spoke about what we're going to talk about, you said, no, this mustn't just be an advertising thing for Pilotbase. Let's talk about aviation. And I think, in our hearts and our grounding is very aviation based, and it always will be. And we're kind of leveraging aviation for to do something else, which in a way it's very cool. But I wonder if it'll ever go away when you do post something. I wonder if you'll ever feel cool about posting that thing. I'm not so sure. It's a weird feeling, and I think it's always going to be there. But I still encourage people to get on the platform and start using it, because that's what it is. It's a platform that's supposed to be used, and personal branding is just as big a thing. I mean, you've got your brand behind you in Pilotbase that you've created, but the Ben Hall brand is a strong brand in itself. So it's all about personal promotion on the same side. And but it's cool to watch, and it's nice to actually hear it from someone else, because I'm sick and tired of being the only oak who feels like a knob when he has to post something.
and you feel like that knob regardless until you get a whole lot of likes, and then you feel great, and then someone says, "Oh, what a dumbass post," or something like that, and you go, "Oh, I'm a knob again." This is
And then it's like, do you interact with the comments if there's like a slightly negative comment? Do you
No, never.
You just block them straight away.
Just tell them, just stop being a knob.
No, every now and again, I mean, you get we got some plank here. He's some manager of a rinky-dink position there at SA. He had something negative to say about us, and I can't help but I'm mentioning them on the show. I make it quite clear that if you want to run us down, I will mention you on the show. So for you to get comeback, you're going to have to start a podcast. You're going to have to do something as well. But I'm learning to take criticism a bit better.
I'll tell you what, a prime example of an idiot like criticizing for the sake of criticizing. We did a little bit of work for this little private jet company in the UK. They just wanted one first officer, so we posted their job and advertised it and stuff. And they were great, because they said, for every person that gets rejected, we're going to offer them a couple of free training courses, because they've got like a suite of electronic training courses. So we sent out these rejection emails, and we got an email back saying, we're just trying to take this guy for a ride and we're trying to rip him off. And I was like, just to confirm, I'm giving you free things. I don't know what more you want. You're not qualified for the job, and I'm giving you free things in response. I can't do anything more.
Man. I think some people, they relate to the, you can get immediate credit by running someone down or something down, and it does take a bit of courage to go out there and do something, that's for sure. But networking, obviously critical going forward into this new world we find ourselves in. I still think it's going to be critical, even in getting flying jobs. I don't see airlines anymore flying you to Abu Dhabi or Dubai for 5 days to do a 5-day interview. I'm pretty sure that's going to change. 3 of those days are probably going to be over Zoom. So you got to learn how to use all those platforms. So that's obviously a new world that we're going into.
So it's really interesting what you said about getting opportunities by networking. So I never even thought this would be a thing, right? So I started all this networking stuff for Pilotbase. But since coming out, I've done loads of little jobs as an aviation consultant, effectively, just because, you get your name out there. People, even though they don't know you, they know that you're a professional and you work hard and, you've got some good ideas and you know the aviation industry. So I've had some quite big companies contact me directly saying, can you just do 3 months of consultancy work? We just need somebody to do this or that. So yeah, for sure. I mean, even if you've got no business or anything like that, get networking, meet people, and opportunities will come your way.
Ben, sorry, Ryan, go ahead there.
No, I was just going to add to that as well. Listening to Chris Williamson's podcast the other day with Jack Butcher, they confirmed it as well. I mean, your CV is going to be sort of like the last 9 things you maybe posted on social media. That's certainly, we've said it many times on this podcast. This is a form of a CV. Get yourself out there. Companies are going to want to know, what have you done with your time? How have you been productive? How have you challenged yourself? And there's no better way to do it than just doing this, rather than sitting on the couch catching up on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Ryan is the biggest thing. I think we've gone through 18 months now. Is it 18 months? Close enough. Where 99% or 99.9% of the population are sitting watching Netflix. They're doing nothing. And then when someone pushes something out and you start building a brand, you start doing a podcast. Alan said there, I mean, everyone has an opinion. They're like a-holes. And some are better than others. So you just have to put up with it. But at least you're doing something, and you've actually pushed something out, making a difference, and that's the thing. But I wanted to ask you before you go, with Pilotbase, is it just pilot jobs, or have you got other lines that are available on that?
So currently it's just pilot jobs. So we've taken the view of starting really, really niche, and then maybe further down the line we'll expand slightly, because obviously there's a lot of crossover into cabin crew. There's actually a lot of crossover into the marine world as well. So, boat captains and stuff like that. But for the time being, it's entirely pilots. It's actually a bit tricky because it's effectively 2 offerings, right? So on one side, we're offering a platform for pilots, and on separate side, we're offering services for recruiters. And it's a bit of a gray line in between, because we want to help both out, and they sometimes have conflicting priorities, shall we say.
Yeah. Ben, I've got one of these. Can I register on Pilotbase?
You can use it as a cup coaster, Brian. That's it.
With my Green Mamba passport as well.
Absolutely, you can. Anybody can register on Pilotbase.
All right, so we got to do that. I think I've particularly and
do you just keep your license in arm's reach at all times, just in case?
Yeah, I've used it now. It sits. It's a placeholder for my whiskey glass here, but no, it's actually quite a shame. I for the first time in my career, this has still got my license from the previous year. I haven't even bothered to put my new license in. I did keep the license current. And the new one is I haven't even bothered to put it in, so it's quite a shame. But that's where we find ourselves these days. But it would be cool if our supporters could get onto Pilotbase, put your details in there. It's awesome that you can link your Log 10 Pro. So I'll definitely do that. And it's nice to also
all free as well. Nobody's got to pay anything.
Ben, where can people get in touch with you and check out your stuff? Where's the best place? You mentioned a few social networks. Where do you prefer to be to connect with people?
I usually loiter with intent on LinkedIn. So just come and follow me, connect with me, do whatever you want. And I'm always up for messages. So send me a DM, or you can even contact me at ben@pilotbase.com, and I'm always happy to help.
Okay, no, that's awesome. Ben, it's been fantastic having you on tonight. I really enjoyed it. It's actually the first time we've chatted face to face, which is crazy because it seems like we've been communicating for a hell of a long time already. Nice to see the podcast doing so well. The podcast Pilotbase is in the show notes, so check it out, subscribe. And have you seen all this new stuff going on with Apple Podcasts right now with the new sort of, I don't know what your take on it. I thought I would see
the premium version.
Yeah, the premium version. I don't know. I'm going to try it out and see how it works, but I haven't noticed any change on the back end of it yet.
No, neither
so I don't know. We'll have to see.
I'll have a tinker over the next couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, that's worth it. Have a bit of a try.
That is the funniest thing to hear you say. I'm going to tinker. Here you are, a cannon fodder individual with the military, teaching them how to shoot down other people, and you tinkering. That's interesting.
So you just got at least one sign up there already. I know you'll get one from myself and Ryan this evening.
Oh yeah, straight up.
So at least we could say it was a successful show for you, Ben.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you deserve a raise.
Face to face as well.
Awesome. That's been fantastic. And sorry, Ryan, you're going to say that?
No, I was just going to say, Ben, before you jump off and before my internet bombs out again, thanks for joining us this evening. It's been great chatting to you, and thanks for dedicating your time to this bunch of knobs.
Speak for yourself and Brett. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do, Ben. Ben. Something I've been wanting to do for a while, but we will catch them on the other side. I'm gonna do this. They're gonna be really pissed off with me now. But and I'll put it back. Otherwise, I'm going to have a nasty day tomorrow. But, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Ben.
Fantastic to have you. And thanks to everyone that tunes in every Tuesday. It really is fantastic. Got a nice following now on the live show. In fact, last week, the live show was actually more popular from amounts of watch hours than the actual podcast. So, yeah, it's something we're trying out. It's doing really well. Ben, there's another one here from Mike Mason. He's signing up as well. That's awesome. And then this is Duncan Gillespie. He's got Fly Africa. It's a massive Facebook group here in South Africa, the best aviation Facebook group by country
Brilliant
mile.
Group.
So
really good.
Yeah, fantastic. So at least some good exposure for you down in this end of the world, which you deserve because you've got some roots at 43 Air School. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening. And until next week, do tune in and we'll see you then. Have a lovely weekend ahead. Enjoy the public holiday tomorrow. And I'll see you boys on Thursday. Cheers, Ben. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.